Today, we're diving into something you probably do all the time, shopping. But we're looking at it through a different lens. What happens when your shopping cart becomes a political statement? We tend to think that voting with your wallet is this very personal, maybe even kind of lonely act. But is that really what's going on?
I mean, really think about it. You're standing in the aisle, you choose one brand over another because of its environmental record or labor practices. Does it feel like you're all on your own, like it's just you making this tiny stand? Well, that's the big question we're going to unpack today.
All right, so first things first. Before we can figure out if it's a solo mission, we've got to get on the same page about what we're even talking about. How exactly does the simple shopping cart turn into something like a ballot box?
Well, there's actually a name for it: political consumerism. And it's a pretty powerful idea, right? It's this belief that every time you buy something, you're not just getting a product, you're casting a vote. You're deliberately using your cash to push for the ethical, political, or environmental change you want to see. And this usually plays out in two ways. On one hand, you've got boycotting. That's the classic move of not buying something to send a message, to punish a company for practices you don't agree with. But on the flip side, you've got buycotting, which is all about actively choosing to buy from companies you do support to reward them for doing good things.
And don't think for a second this is some niche activity. Not at all. A recent study of young people in the UK and Greece found that almost 3/4 of them, 73.2%, had done this in the last year. This is absolutely a mainstream thing.
Okay, so if that many people are doing it, why do we still have this image of it being a solo mission? It's time to really dig in and question that whole assumption.
You know, for a long time, the common wisdom, even among experts, was that this is the perfect example of an individualized political act. It's something you do on your own, a private choice that's totally separate from old-school stuff like marches or protests. But is that really true?
To find out, we're going to look at a fascinating study from 2021. Researchers surveyed over 600 young adults in two really different places, the UK and Greece, to see what truly motivates them. They wanted to get past the theories and look at the actual data.
Now, here's a super important point about how they did this. They took what's called a subjectivist standpoint. And all that means is this: for a purchase to count as political, it doesn't matter if the big corporation even notices you did it. What matters is your intention. If you meant for it to be a statement, then boom, it's a political act.
Okay, so with that rule in place, that it's all about intent, the researchers started asking why people were making these choices. And what they found, well, it starts to paint a very, very different picture from the old individual theory.
Just take a look at the UK. A huge 89% of young people there said they'd be willing to spend more money on products that are environmentally responsible. Think about that. That's not about personal gain. That's about caring for the planet.
And what about in Greece? A very similar story. Over 81% were ready to pay extra to support their local producers, to strengthen the ties in their own communities. Again, the focus is pointed outward, on the well-being of the group.
And when you lay out all the top motivations side by side, this incredible pattern just jumps out at you. Sure, personal health is up there, and that makes total sense. But look at almost everything else. The environment, fair trade, local producers, animal rights. These are all fundamentally about caring for something much bigger than yourself. It's about conscience, not just personal convenience. And this is where we get to the absolute heart of the matter. The data doesn't just suggest this, it practically shouts it from the rooftops. This whole thing is way more about identity than it is about individualism. So let's just ask the big question one more time, now that we've seen the data. Is this behavior really driven by people with a purely individualistic, me-first kind of mindset?
The answer from the study is a clear, loud, unambiguous no. Not even a little bit. In fact, the researchers found zero statistical link between having an individualistic outlook and actually buying things for political reasons. The real connection was hiding somewhere else entirely.
And this chart says it all. It's stunning. The researchers checked to see what kind of personal outlook was linked to these shopping habits. For people with that individualistic outlook, nothing. Zilch. No statistical connection. But for people with what they call a cosmopolitan outlook, people who see themselves as citizens of the world connected to global issues, the link was positive, strong, and undeniable.
So if this isn't an individual act, then what in the world is it? Well, this is where the data points to this really cool idea, that through these choices, people are building something called imagined communities.
It all starts with something called social identity theory. Basically, it's the idea that a huge part of our sense of self, who we think we are, comes from the groups we feel like we belong to. The big question that drives us isn't just, who am I? It's, who are we?
And that leads right into this concept of imagined communities, which is just perfectly summed up by this quote. It's about that feeling of connection you have with a whole group of people, say everyone else who buys fair trade coffee, even though you've never met them. You all share this image of your connection in your heads.
So here's how it works, broken down. Step 1, you make what looks like an individual choice, buying that cruelty-free product. But step 2, that choice is based on values you share with countless other people. Step 3, that action becomes a signal of your membership in that group. And finally, step 4, you become part of this global tribe, this imagined community. See, you're not acting alone at all.
What all of this means is that we have to totally redefine what voting with your wallet is all about. It's a completely different kind of political action than most of us thought.
This is the big shift. The old view was that it was an individualized collective action. You make your choice alone, and maybe it adds up with other people's choices. But the new reality this study reveals is that it's a collective cosmopolitan action. The feeling of being part of a group, a collective, comes first. And that sense of shared global identity is what drives you to make the purchase in the first place.
So, the next time you're about to pay, just remember this. Your choice isn't just some whisper in the wind. It's a signal. It's a badge of identity that connects you to a massive, imagined community of people all over the world who believe in the same things you do. You are not acting alone. You're acting together. The only question left is, what story will your shopping cart tell?